Hello everyone, my name is Niels, Environment Artist at CR Division, and welcome back to the next chapter. In this chapter we'll be adding more details to our model. This will become our high poly in the end. We'll add details that can be baked down, soften the edges, etc. High poly versions of your model can be made in different ways, of course. You can export your low detail version and polish everything inside of ZBrush, but for this tutorial we'll just focus on adding all the details inside of Fusion. Before proceeding with the high detail version, I would strongly advise to save a different file and call it _high or any naming convention you want. This way we will still have our low detail version which we can export. Alright, let's look at some references and see which details we will be adding. We will be adding details to the knob such as these little lines, all the bolts, screws, basically everything that can be baked down. Now, if you organize your reference well and you used some notes, you can see some modeling guidelines such as small holes, all of these softened edges. Basically everything you noted down we will add to the model. Alright, let's get started. Alright, the first thing that I do, or one of the first things that I do, is make sure that everything sharp on a model is smoothened out by fillets. So for example this one, you just drag it out, you look at reference, but make sure that you push it a little bit further than what it is in real life, because of course it will bake better like that. So I just go around the model and try to find all the sharp edges that still need to be smoothened out. I go around, I find some, and basically that is the entire process of smoothing out the model. Of course this part you could easily do in ZBrush as well. So if you'd rather make your high poly in ZBrush or smoothen out the sharp edges, you can do that by just polishing Dynamesh, just basically the ZBrush workflow. So if you wanted to create your high poly outside of Fusion, you would do the same thing. You would do the export in either Moy by XYZ or export straight from Fusion as a .stl and then import it to ZBrush. We'll show you the exporting from Fusion into Polygon later on, but this is just showing you another way how you can create a high poly if you don't want to add all the fillets. So what you would do is you have your raw model, you would export it at a little bit higher resolution so you don't get any visible faceting in ZBrush. This is just a test model, so of course you could export it at a higher resolution. What you would do then is just Dynamesh it at a resolution. You just type in what seems best, just try it out once, and that already looks pretty good. So what you would do then is polish here in the deformation tab. You would polish your crisp edges with open or closed circle, just like so. Then polish by features to get the bigger faceting gone. And then you can just play around with it, basically just using polish at a low amount. And your edges will be way smoother than what it started out with. Of course you will have to edit some stuff and refine it further, but I'll just show you another way how you can create a high poly from what you already have in Fusion. So you're not only in ZBrush, sorry, so that you're not only limited to using Fusion as a tool to create high polys, but you can mix and match softwares a little bit. I went ahead and already added the fillets and made everything just a little bit smoother compared to the model, the low detail that we had. So if you look at it in smooth preview, if you press Ctrl 4 on your keyboard, you'll get rid of the wireframes. And we can do the same thing for here. You can already notice quite a big difference. Everything just appears to be just a little bit smoother and more high poly. If you zoom in on these parts, everything is smooth, but our high poly isn't done yet. If we're done with the big shapes, we can start focusing on little details. The first thing we'll be focusing on is this little piece here. We'll be creating these lines, make everything smooth, and get that little detail in here. So if you analyze the references, you can see it kind of goes in a triangle. So we'll get that in first. The easiest way for me is to create a cylinder. For me it is Shift R, select the face, and if you see the little circle appear, that means you're in the middle of the object. And you can make it as big as you want. If you look at the ref, we don't want to join it, we just want to create a new body. And then we're going to do the process again. We're going to create a pipe and select the outer edge here, and then select triangle, and then you see the triangle is facing the correct direction. Then we can just scale it up, and we want to cut the model, of course. We don't need this one anymore, so we can just delete it. And there we go, we have that little detail in. Now you can fillet everything to make everything smooth. You can also do that line. And if you're not happy with it, you can make it a little bit bigger or smaller. The next thing we're going to be focusing on is this little detail here, the lines, and make everything a little bit smoother. So before we start adding the lines, I'm going to isolate it, and then we can already smoothen out the edges first, else we're going to have some issues later on, and it's just going to make our life easier. So let's just smooth these out. We're going to look at ref, it's quite rounded, and I pressed the wrong key. Press F to fill it and make it just a tad rounded. Now everything is one chain. You can just press F on a line. Same for here, and add a fillet. There we go. Looks smooth. Now to add these little lines in, all we want to do is create a sketch on this plane. So L for line, create a sketch. And then if we look at ref, we can see it starts here around the curve somewhere, and there's quite a big space left over without lines. We can create a line maybe from the curve here, create a long line, and press OK, and that's it. We finish the sketch and we just create another pipe. We select the line, and of course this is too big. I want to scale it down just a tad. That looks pretty good. We don't want to cut the model yet. It's going to be easier if we create a new body and select OK. And what we want to do, because this is basically our Boolean body, we want to fillet it already because we're going to make an array. And make sure there's no nasty lines. We can move it a little bit. There we go. What we want to do next is go to create, and then we want to select pattern on path. So what this will do is basically create an array of the tool bodies you create. You can also do faces, and you select it, and then you want to select the path. So we want it to go up or down depending how you see it. So what you want to do next is look for a line that goes up. On this face we don't really have any line that goes straight up, but we do have a line that goes up right here. So you select that, then you can drag it out. Then you want to see how many lines there are. So in this case there are 7. So we just select the quantity and change it to 7. Move it up just a tad. Let's see exactly where it ends. Doesn't have to be perfect, of course. And I think this is fine. You can press OK. And then you have an array of the same tool bodies. Now, we want to select this body. Press Ctrl B for combine. And then select your tool bodies. Just drag them out. And we want to cut the model, of course. And then you select OK. And there we go. We got those details in. Easy. Now if you want it to the other side, you would just basically mirror the object, and done. Alright, cool. The next thing we're gonna add in is this little screw here and this detail over here. We'll see if we're gonna add these pieces right here. I think it's gonna be easier to do in Painter, but let's just get started on this piece here. This is the same for this one and this one, but we're just gonna do one and then copy it over again. So if you look at the ref, it starts here, a little bit of distance. So what we can do, we could technically just extrude this part here by pressing E, because it's a flat face, and then we can fillet this part. Then we can extrude it again, the flat face, create a new body, or you can join it together, whatever you want, but it's a high poly, so it doesn't really matter for optimization. Click OK. And we're going to make it a little bit rounded instead of keeping it all the way flat, so we're going to chamfer it again and then do the trick to get it nice and rounded, so you have a little bit of more normal detail. Let's move it out just a tad, like so. Let's check out the ref. It's actually a bit more out, so we can move it out more, like this. Alright, we can fill it, this part here, so it's nice and smooth. And the next thing we can do is create a sketch on this flat plane to create this detail here. So what we're going to do is just create a center point rectangle. If it snaps to the middle, it's going to be a circle. Do it like this, and then extrude it. Cut the body. What I like to do is give it a little angle to it, so it bakes a little bit better. If you look at the front view, you can see it better. The objects you need to cut, you don't want to cut the main body, so you can just disable it. And there we go. Now you can smooth this out by pressing F, and do the same for this loop here. There we go. Now we have this body, and then we can basically just copy it over to the top part. So what we can do next is chamfer these hard edges just a tad, as well as the little pointer just a little bit so it bakes down nicely. Same for these. And then we have a nice loop that we can chamfer. There we go. Sometimes you can't really dial it all the way down because it reaches the edge here, so that doesn't really matter. And there we go. So the only thing left to do is chamfer this little piece here just that, so it has a little bit of normal detail to it. So now that we have some experience adding screws to items or objects, you can go ahead and check some references, find some screws, and just add all the details that you need. Some little rivets here. So these are quite minor. For example, if you want to screw here on this piece, like this one, you can just isolate the part. You can either sketch on the plane, and if you want it real perfect, you can just create this line at an angle, or you can just basically create a circle, because probably no one's gonna really measure it out. So if you're happy with it, I'll just do that one real quick and show you how to move it in case you weren't happy with it. You can then extrude it out, do a cut, and let's say you're not quite happy with the size, you can always change it. So let's do it a little bit like this. Look at some ref. It's actually quite big, so let's keep it at that. Now if you're not happy with the position it's at, you can always just move it around anywhere on the model. Just make sure you don't hit any curved edges, because it will start to glitch out a little bit. So if you're happy, just move it and press OK. Look at the ref a little bit. We might want to move it just a little bit more to the side so we have some room for our fillet. So then we want to smooth this out a little bit, make sure to over exaggerate so it bakes well. We press OK, and then for the screw part we can just basically press E on the plane to extrude it out. It goes outside of the body real quick, just a little bit, sorry, and we can press new body. Then we can use a fillet, or we can use a chamfer again to get just a slight curve to the main body so it's not a flat face. Then fillet this one, and if there's some detail to it, like it's another line, you can do the same as before. Create a sketch, center point rectangle, draw it, extrude it out, get a little angle in there so it bakes nice, cut it, and make sure to deselect the main body, and then smooth these parts out. Whoops, I lost it. like so. And there we go, we have our screw. So just a little quick tip, if you have screws that are on both sides, so the right side and the top one, just kind of the same space, you can just select this one again, and instead of using the pattern on path, you can use a rectangular pattern. So you would use your objects, just select faces, select these two, then the axes, you select this one and one going up, and you can move it to the right and you can move it up. So what you want to do next is, depending on how many objects you want, you can just decrease or increase the value and press OK. So for the next part, we're going to focus on this little pattern here. And there's multiple ways you can tackle something in Fusion, but I'm just going to do something real quick. So this is this part right here. I'm going to isolate it, create a cube in the middle of the object. Don't cut it, just create a new body. And we're going to cut it exactly in half. There we go. So we're probably going to need this part, so we can already extrude it. It'll come in handy later on. We can delete this part, we don't need it. And then we're going to create a sketch on this face right here. Create a sketch. Going to take the line tool. We're going to project this one. And we're going to create a stepping pattern. Now you might want to play around with it just a little bit. And as I said, there's probably multiple ways you can tackle something like this. But this is just something that I just figured out right now. So we're going to do that for the entire section. And I think this is fine for now. If you want more, you can just make them a little bit smaller. But we can go ahead and finish the sketch. Then we can create a sweep. Select all the profiles that we just sketched out. And select this little rounded part here. And we can just press new body, so it doesn't join with the object we need to cut. Select this one, Ctrl B, and select the one we just made, so it's joined together. Now, this part isn't cut yet, so what we can do is we just move away this part, or we can just delete this face right here, so we didn't actually need it at all. Cool, there we go. Then you can just mirror it again, join it together, and we have that little stepping pattern. Alright, for the next part we're going to focus on this little hinge right here. If you want it to be 100% accurate, you could count how many cuts there are. In this case there's 13. It also is indented in the body, so we're going to get that in first. If we try to cut this little hinge block out that we have already from the body, we would be left with something that is quite unusable. In our case, it would end up with some weird geometry here, because it's going to be very thin. It's always better to avoid stuff like that, so you can just draw a rectangle and pretty much just eyeball it. Something like that, and it goes over. And drag it all the way down. You can select the face so it snaps to it and move it just a tad down. Then we want to extrude it in and exclude the body from it. So I think this is 99. Yep, okay, cool. So if we isolate it now, we can see we have a clean, straight cut. We can always move it in a little bit deeper if you want to. So for the cuts on the hinges, again, there's probably a lot of ways you can handle it or tackle it, but I'm just gonna create a rectangle to sketch on. I'm gonna drag it down the length of the hinge. So we create a new body and we're just gonna sketch on this one. So we want to project the first one, the second one. We click OK. So if you remember, we have 13 cuts. So the top one and the bottom one is excluded, so we want to do 15. So for this cut, you would just create a line if there's none already. You can drag it out a bit more, and then we would create a pattern, a rectangular pattern, and select this object right here. Then the direction would just be down, so you can select it or you can just move it and try to align it kind of the same. And we're going to type in 15 because the bottom and the top is excluded. So we can press OK now, finish the sketch and delete this part. Then we want to cut from the body and we want to select every single one of them, like so. Click OK and the body is split. The next part we wanted to make it visible, because if you go to wireless mode, it goes like this and you can't really see it. So we're going to give it a little fillet. Like so. You could also chamfer it if you want a sharper look. And all that's left to do is chamfer the bottom and top. And there we go, we have our little piece. Now if we want to have a little bit more detail in here so it bakes down, we can first do the inner edges like so, so it chains nicely. To give it a little bit more detail, we can select these two edges here, give it a fillet so it chains the entire selection, and we can put a slight fillet on that one so it'll bake nicely. Cool. Just wanted to drop in real quick to show a shape that maybe I haven't shown before. I'm talking about this right here, the little grip pattern on the lens. So as you can see, it's a circle, but it goes a little bit like so. So the shape looks like this. Doesn't go up quite as much. You could easily do this in Painter as well, but I'm just going to show you the Fusion part in case you want to do it in Fusion. So let's just isolate the shape that we want to do it on. Sketch on the front plane. Create a sketch in the middle. So you circle and go straight up. This will be our mirror plane. On the ref, it doesn't go up quite as much, so we can just sketch a random shape and make it kind of flat. Cool. Then we can just mirror that part. Might as well mirror it all on the line that we just created. Then we can drag it out, create a new body, and the best part would be to already chamfer the edges just a little bit like so. And then what you want to do is we're going to do another pattern, but this time we're going to do circular pattern. We're going to select the body and select the axis. And it is set to full. If you don't want it full, you can do partial and then you can just set the angle, but we want it to go across the entire shape, so we're going to do full. Now it's quite a lot of them, so we're just going to drag the slider here. Is the distribution or amount. If it doesn't quite go all the way you want to, just let it go and do it again. You can also put in the amount you want here, so maybe 60. It's a little bit too little. Let's go for 80 or 100 even. That seems about right. And then we want to join everything together and press OK. And there we have our shape. If you want it to be smoother, you can just select all the edges, press F to fill it, then drag it. Might take a while because there's quite a lot of shapes. And there we go. Another part we can do is on the same lens, this part right here, because it's an angled surface. So the best way to tackle this is just to isolate that one and go to construct and click on tangent plane. This will create a plane that is tangent to whatever face you select. So you can select this one and press OK. As you can see, it is tangent with that plane. You can then sketch on it, and if we want the middle line, because right now it's quite hard to tell what is the middle, we can just press P to project and select one of these and this one maybe, then press OK. So you can see that there's two dots appearing. This is the middle line. You can just go and create a straight line And that's all we need to do. You can finish your sketch and create a tube or pipe. And we want it to be square, or you can make it circular actually. And then just decrease the size just a little bit. Want to look at some ref, and we can just cut the model. And there we go. Then we could technically smooth it out, but you can select that one face that we just created. Press your shortcut and go to circular pattern. Your object or face is already selected, and then you can just select the axis again and select this one. Now I don't think we will need 100 right now, maybe just a little bit less. Let's go for 90, even less, 80 perhaps, or even 70. Third time's a charm. Let's take a look. Okay. And we can just press OK. And there we have the shape that we were looking for. Alright. We've done quite a bit already, but there's still some parts that need to be edited as well. They need some screws, some holes, some fillets. Everything needs to be smooth. So feel free to check out your references and do it yourself. There shouldn't be anything that we haven't seen in this tutorial, so feel free to check out some references and tackle that stuff yourself. I'll get back to you with the stuff I've done, so see you in a bit. Hello everyone, welcome back. By this time your high poly model should be pretty much finished. You should have added all the smoothness to the sharp edges, all the little details like the bolts, the screws, the rivets. Should look something like this or similar. As you can see, I added quite a lot of detail here and there. Added all the details that we pointed out in the references with our notes. At the bottom we have this thing as well. Made some holes for the thread. I also added this little detail behind the lens in the high poly. One of the main things I did was pretty much just change the size of this knob right here. I figured this out by just looking at the ref, and the spacing between stuff didn't really match quite as good. Let me just find a reference here. Yeah, the distance between this one didn't really match, and I figured this one was too small, and how I did it was I just screenshot the side of my model, put it in Photoshop, and compared it to this one. So I copied over this knob here and checked how many fit inside of the body, and I did the same thing for my model. And you can see the knob that I have was pretty small, and I pointed it out here in the yellow. This right here, the distance didn't really quite match, so I just made it a little bit bigger. So I just used the scale tool basically to scale it up, and I did the same thing for this one. I just cut it out of the main body, so it wasn't a lot of extra work. Then I just moved this one up to here, and it matches a little bit closer to what we have in the reference. One more thing I did was check ref for the lens here, and put that in the high poly as well as in the low poly as well. So it's fine to just switch back to high and low if you find some details while doing your high poly. It's always good to go back to your low and change some details there as well. So obviously when you change the knob, for example, you want it to be changed into the low as well. So that's pretty much it for the high detail version. Now we have a high detail and a low detail. As you can see, we have quite a lot of details that will be baked down later in the videos. The next part will be pretty much converting both of these assets into polygons, and we'll be working in our other software, either 3ds Max, Blender, whatever you're using. So, see you there.